We are joined now on the phone by Sean Callahan, who's also with SIP in Nashville. Sean, good morning. You guys are heading home from the On3 convention. What was the time like in Nashville for your couple of days, Sean?
It's just always good to see a lot of guys that do what we do, because there aren't very many people that have, jobs like this where you cover a team and you deal with some of the same problems and things that you deal with on a daily basis. So it's always fun. I mean, there's probably 65 people or so that came in. They did 3 of these over the last month, but this was by far their biggest one as far as the number of people that had attended. And I wanted to get SIP out in Nashville, and I think he had a good time out here.
But he didn't get to Broadway, apparently.
He never heard any music.
Disturbed by this. The country music he never got to.
He used the escape hatch last night. There was a Tom Dienhart and a group of guys. They left about 8:39, and he went back because he had to get ready for you, Jake.
Well, that's an excuse, though, Sean. He could have stayed out later. I appreciate that from SIP.
I had to do some show prep. Get the old guy car, Sean. How late were you there? How late were you at Uncle Bean's?
It's probably around 12.
Ooh.
And you got back at 8:30, SIP? Is that what you said?
SIP?
What? Come on. You could have got a couple more hours.
Did you just walk in and ask for a to-go plate? Grab a to-go plate. I'm getting the heck out of here.
No, I had a beer and a plate of food. And I was social with people. I was social.
Well, thank you, SIP, for being, I guess, responsible here, but that's fine. Sean, I want to get to you. You guys chatted with Zach Taylor recently, of course, former Husker, now the Bengals head coach. And you guys chatted about many things, but he commented about Dylan Raiola. What was Zach Taylor's comments about what he sees for Dylan Raiola this year and going forward?
Well, you had to be careful not to talk too much about his performance. I'm not sure NFL coaches really talk about college players, but as a person and how he represents Nebraska, I think he's very impressed with all of that. And obviously, he knows he's a prospect. He's got to prove it now, probably the next 2 years, to see what he can do, because he had ups and downs as a freshman. And I think we all know where things could go with him if he plays to his potential. And that's what these next 2 years will be for Dylan. But Zach, you can tell, is very impressed with Dylan and just kind of the direction he's potentially heading.
One of the things he was impressed with is just his approachability. Sean, have you ever seen a Nebraska quarterback as comfortable in the limelight? Now I'm putting you on the spot. You got to think over your 25 years of doing this. Have you ever seen a Nebraska quarterback as comfortable in the limelight as Dylan?
Not really. I'm just trying to think of previous ones, but just this thing they're doing now where it's like a marketing tour almost. They're going out to different high school basketball games and, doing photos of the entire student sections. And Dylan and Emmett last night made the snow day announcement for Omaha Catholic schools for Omaha Scud after the game on their social media. I think all the quarterbacks are so Dylan. Every one of them have their own personalities, but I think Dylan, came to campus with as high as expectations, and he understood the expectations, and I think he was ready for this, and he's kind of embraced the role. Where a year ago at this time, he was brand new. He hadn't played yet, so he couldn't really act like he was a leader of the team. And I think that's what's different about now this offseason. He can truly operate as the starting quarterback, where a year ago they didn't have that in Lincoln. They couldn't really say that because he still had to kind of prove it. And even the year before that, when Matt Rule came, Jeff Sims was brand new. And we didn't really know because, Casey Thompson and Chubba Purdy were still around that opening spring, and they had started games too. So this is the first time really there's been kind of a defined quarterback returning that is going to be the guy since Matt Rule has been at Nebraska, and Dylan's, really embraced that.
It's just got to be kind of cool, again, if you're watching a high school basketball game all across the Omaha area, Lincoln area, and you're seeing Raiola and Emmett Johnson show up. It's every single week, Sean, a couple times a week now.
When I was playing high school basketball, Amon Green came to one of our games because he was friends with one of the Ron Colley players. He was playing at Nebraska back at this point. And I remember just how, in the 90s, we're talking 1998 or something like that. I guess he would have been in the NFL in 98, but when you see a guy like that at your high school game, everyone's like, "Wow, Mom!" So yeah, you're right. I can't even imagine the feeling these kids get and the gym gets. And I mean, they essentially reserve the front row center court seats for them. I mean, yeah, they're not going in there just to sit in the top row and hang out. I mean, they're making a full appearance. And even at Nebraska basketball games in Lincoln, they sit in those courtside seats behind the basket. And constantly people come up to him and take pictures. So yeah, he's definitely, he understands the role he's in and he embraces it very well.
I think Amon was still there in '98. He was still at Nebraska, wasn't he?
Well, wasn't his senior season 97?
That was Lawrence's senior season. That was Lawrence Phillips' season.
Well, the national championship team was Amon's final team, right? 97.
I thought he was there in '99. I thought he was on that team to beat. He was on the team to beat Tennessee in the Fiesta Bowl. Amon was. But anyway.
Well, no, he wasn't. That was Dan Alexander and Carell Buckhalter.
99, really?
We'll have to confirm with Amon.
God,
see if he was on that team or not.
Fact check. Okay. As far as Dylan goes, okay, there's Dylan, obviously the starting quarterback. Is Emmett Johnson just pretty much the starting running back now, no matter what? Is that the way this is working out?
Well, there's just nobody that even has the resume that could challenge him, at least at this day. I mean, Jamarian Parker could come in and make some hay. Quentin Ives obviously has an opportunity. Mekhi Butler. I mean, they've got players here. But yeah, I think Emmett has positioned himself in that way. And by the way, Amon's green, and I'm not looking this up, but he played 95, 96, 97. So those were his 3 years. In 95, he took over for LP when LP got in trouble. And then he finished out in 97.
Yeah, you're right. I'm looking it up right now. You're right.
A different memory.
I get some free bagels from Bagels and Joe for that.
We got you covered, Sean. Don't worry. We'll get you some bagels for sure.
I did my own round of Shut Up Simple here.
You did. You beat you got trivia covered there. Okay, Sean, we talked about in the last couple of weeks about the spring game as we know it is not going to be the same in Lincoln. Do you know any sort of rumblings of a plan to try to make up for what that looks like in Lincoln without a traditional spring game in April?
I think a lot of it is just going to be what the pieces on the table look like and what they have to work with and what they want to do. I mean, the coaches are still gone for the most part this week, and then they'll return for mat drills and kind of get going. So, I mean, we're a good 6 weeks from the start of spring practices. They're not going to start until the final week of March. So I don't really know if they can just say what they want to do. But yeah, will it be kind of more of an open practice that's fun, or more of, like Ole Miss last year did this actually. Lane Kiffin did the same thing Nebraska's probably going to do. I mean, they had like tug of war and games and fun stuff. It wasn't obviously a true game. And I think you're going to see more and more teams go to something like this, especially with the portal and the NIL element of how much money you're paying some of these players. It's become no different than the NFL. You don't put Patrick Mahomes through a live game in preseason. I mean, I think college football is going to that similar model where you're not going to see a lot of teams put their high players that you're paying all this money to now in situations where A, they could be poached, or B, they could get hurt.
Could you see Sean Callahan joins us? You have a good, this is unprecedented. Since you've been covering Nebraska football, there's always been a spring game. So this is a sort of a difficult question, but could you see a scenario where there's no game? They announce, there's not going to be a game. It's been announced. Could they still draw 40,000, 50,000 people on April 26th to watch something?
Depending on how they package it. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised with Nebraska fans. I mean, nothing would surprise me, especially if they got going and not this year, but like it had a good year this year down the road. Anything they would do, people would show out for. The spring game, let's not kid ourselves. It really wasn't a great game. I mean, they dumbed it down. It was mostly third string versus third string. You'd see the starters play a little bit, but they had kind of toned down what they had already were doing. That 1 year Scott Frost, they didn't even tackle. It was complete tag off, or once you touched the ball carrier, the play was dead. So they had already kind of been going this direction. But yeah, this will be a complete change when they just eliminate the entire game. And I think a lot of it is just going to depend on how they market it and present what it's going to be. And then people will make their decisions from there.
Cam Jurgens, Sean. Cam Jurgens. Think back to Okay, I already screwed up a fact check. Whenever that was it 2018 when Frosty made the decision to move Cam to center? Was it that was the year, I think, right?
Yeah, so Jurgens arrived in the season of 2018, Frost's first year, and came in as a tight end. And by the late part of that year, Frost made the decision to transition him to a center.
Mm-hmm.
And he really wanted that to work. He really saw that. And in 2019, he started at center. I mean, that's how quick it happened. And was he ready at that moment? Probably not. And we saw the growing pains, but clearly the big picture was there, what he could be. And I mean, Cam's an amazing athlete. I'll never forget him as a freshman, seeing him at the state basketball tournament, ran into his parents down outside the arena and talked to his mom. And she says to me, she goes, do you think my son is good enough to be a Husker someday? You think he'd be a Husker? I'm like, yeah, I think he could play a lot bigger than that someday. He's got that kind of potential. Just an amazing three-sport athlete with his basketball, his shot put in discus, and obviously what he did. He played running back in high school. I mean, think about that. The starting center in the Super Bowl caught passes, carried the football, and now he's blocking for the Super Bowl champions up front. He's a special player that he's on a good team. He could be playing for a long, long time. And who knows what his ceiling is now in the NFL if he keeps getting notoriety and plays 8 or 10 more years like this.
What was your memory of the reaction when Frost made that move? I have a memory. I just wonder what years when Frost announced. I remember it when Frost came to the post-practice session and made that announcement. It was big news that day. Do you remember the reaction, like on the message board and such?
I think there was a little pushback. I mean, because when you're a skill position player and you're supposed to be an impact skill position player, people want you to stay there. They're like, oh, well, we got this. But I'll give one of our former guys I worked with, Josh Hemholt. He was always bullish at Rivals when we were there on Cam's ranking. And he would just say, Sean, he goes, I don't think he's a tight end. I really don't. There's a lot of 6'3", 245-pound tight ends out there. And, to me, he's not a 4-star high-end tight end. He goes, I think he's probably more of a defensive lineman, edge player. But our guys never really looked at him as a top 100 player as a tight end. Mm-hmm. But clearly center was probably his ultimate spot. But when you're that good at a school the size of Beatrice, they got to use you everywhere. And Cam Jurgens on the O-line probably wouldn't have helped Beatrice very much. I mean, they used him in so many other areas that could help that team. And they were a really good team when he was there. I mean, they didn't win state, but they were a top 8 team in Class B, and he was a big reason why. And then as he transitioned, stopped playing 3 sports, you saw how his body developed.
Sean, last thing, we'll let you go. Nebraska basketball lost 6 straight games. They've now won 4 straight games. They're trending toward the tournament, but do you trust them to get there? Or are you still in the back of your head a little skeptical that this could that they're a little bit concerned about how this goes the next couple games?
Well, if you look at the Big Ten standings right now, okay, they have 4 games right now remaining against arguably the 4 worst teams right now in the league: Penn State, Minnesota, Iowa, Northwestern. Mm-hmm. So if you won those 4 games, which, as we know, is never a sure thing, that's 20 wins right there. I mean, they've got the road map to get there. Then they've got some big-time quad 1 games coming up against teams like Maryland coming into Lincoln this week. So they have the opportunity. There's no question. And, I think 19 seems likely, but 20, you almost would be disappointed if they couldn't get to 20 right now in the regular season.
Yeah.
Hey, one more. If Fred gets to the tournament and Nebraska wins a game, do you build a single game, which Bill Bush has predicted that they win a game this year? Do you build a statue for Fred?
No, they're not building any statues.
Come on, Sean. First time ever.
Got to get to the Final Four for a statue is what I
never happened here.
It really is amazing that Danny never won a game because he had some really good teams. Like when you think about it now, like this stat is just so Nebraska, like that this happened. There have been some really good teams here that were far better than this team. And, if they get in and get the right draw, yeah, they can win. I mean, last year they should have won a game, but they got a terrible matchup draw. Texas A&M was a really tough matchup for them. And so much of this is going to be who they get matched up against. I've seen Memphis as a matchup, teams like that. So we'll see who they would match up with if they get in. And you'd like them to be maybe a 10 seed. A 10-7 game would be a nice matchup, I think.
Sean, always good stuff. Thanks for the time, and we'll chat with you again next week.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
HuskerOnline Sean Callahan is not a fan of the idea of a statue for Fred Hoiberg.